everybody. Welcome to Zoom at 8. My name is Julianne Peterson, and I am your host every Tuesday night for Zoom at 8. As well, I am a loan officer or senior director at Old Capital Lending. We are a premier provider of debt in multifamily. Okay, so if you're looking at a deal, if you're considering, hey, what does debt look like on this asset? Please give me a call. Let me help you. Okay. The debt right now is causing all sorts of problems. And Jack and Alan are going to probably share some of their experiences recently on a deal because they were significantly impacted with the debt situation. And as a lender, that's what we do. We provide feedback, we provide understanding. We just got back from the Old Capital Conference, and you know what? The rates are on the move. Today, 3.57 on 10-year Treasury. So be aware when you're underwriting, what do the returns look like? Again, let me have a conversation with you. Let's talk about the T12, the rent roll. What is your returns that your clients need? That's really what you have to do, is find out, what are your investors open to? Are they open to 6% returns? That's a different conversation than somebody that's trying to get a 10. That's not happening too much these days. So let's get on with the show, you guys. I want to introduce you. Remember, our goal at Zoom at 8 is to educate you and to network. So this gives you great opportunities. Tonight, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you the Sapient Capital Group, which is made up of Alan Stewart and Jack Langenberg. Okay, these guys are in Dallas. They have done quite a bit of business with Old Capital. They work with Paul Peebles. I want you to get to know what it looks like to be working with some very skilled, impressive operators who have a very good and strong resume. And these are the two guys that make up our co-founders of Sapient Capital. So Alan has been doing this since 2012, as Jack has been doing since 2012. Jack has done 20 projects. Alan's done 17, so very close in numbers. Alan was a consulting executive for 20 years, and Jack was a CFO and COO of multiple companies. They're both our bestsellers. They've been on the bestseller list as an author. And Alan went to Texas A&M, and Jack went to Notre Dame and went to Harvard Business School. So these guys have a lot of experience outside of multifamily. So I want you guys to understand what it takes. What is the character? What is the personality? What does it take to be successful in this community? These guys have been doing it long enough. They've got a long resume of deals, but it really comes down to your partnerships. Okay, so tonight I want to kind of unpack and set the stage for each of these guys. So let's first hear from Alan. Alan Stewart, welcome to Zoom at 8. How are you tonight?
Great. Thanks, Julie. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
So you got 17 projects, 3,400 units. Are those all as a general partner, or do you have a combination?
Combination.
Okay.
So between Jack and I, 8 of our deals are as general partner, working on our 9th right now, and then the balance is limited partners.
Great. So you started out as limited partners first, I assume, right? Just like I say.
Yep, we did. As a matter of fact, very first deals that we ever did in multifamily was limited partner. That's actually how we met 10 years ago.
10 years ago. So,
yeah.
and multifamily wasn't what it is today, right? I mean, you got educated, but it wasn't this craziness that we're seeing right now. Can you kind of walk us through how you started? What was your, and Alan, I'm going to put this off to you, and then Jack, you can certainly chime in too, but Alan, what got you to get into real estate? Was it first single family and then multifamily? Kind of walk us through that.
Sure. For me, I'm kind of a slow learner. So in 2001, actually, I went to a conference here in Dallas, and Robert Kiyosaki and Donald Trump were speaking. And Robert was talking about his book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, which was 3 years old at the time. And for me, this is really the first investing conference I'd been to, and I was always searching for something new. I'm kind of a lifelong learner. And it was the light bulb went off for me, like, oh, well, there's a whole different world out there of, investing in assets to produce cash flow instead of trading time for money, which is what I'd always been taught. So, then I went on an 11-year education / journey in parallel to my corporate career of, trying to find a way to get started. As you mentioned, there wasn't quite the access to information that there is today. I mean, we're talking years and years before the iPhone. So just to put in that perspective, and, I finally got connected with a mentor, and was actually focused on single family wholesaling. And so that's how I got my start. And I would say I learned a lot from that process, made a few mistakes, some successes, but, figured out that wasn't quite what I was looking for. And then 2012, when I got introduced to multifamily, it was like the big second light bulb of, oh, wow, this is value as a business, it has commercial loans. I was a busy professional, so I could, have leverage in terms of time with third-party property management. So for me, it was like I was all in from that point on.
Yeah, amazing. So you got educated, and you got educated in the single family, then you went to multifamily. Can you tell us a little bit about that education program that you were in or currently are still in?
Sure. I mean, so being a 20-year management consultant, what I did in my corporate career was, either help people make more revenue, reduce costs, or reduce risk. And so, I'm a big proponent of, investing in education to, reduce my learning curve and reduce my risk. And so when I found, a mentor that actually had done multifamily before, really attracted to me to that. And, not only that, but also in the area where I lived, as opposed to things I'd done before where it was, you fly to some place and you go to some, meeting and you get put off to some supposed training course that, has nothing to do with, the area where you, live and want to invest. And so, that's what attracted me to it. And, it was a great way to get, from 0 to 1. And, as well as meet, other people trying to do the same thing and other service providers. Fun story about, Paul Peebles. So, he was actually a friend way before I got into multifamily. We went to church together. Actually, our daughters were in Indian Princess along with Paul's daughter. And so we had all these connections before multifamily came around. And when it did come around, that's when we saw, oh, Paul, that's what you actually do. You're, but we never talked shop. So, anyway.
Interesting. That's really, I mean, it is such a small community, right? And it is all about relationships. And look at how you've just expanded so much over the last 10 years. So great. All right. So Jack, thanks for being with us tonight. I really appreciate both of your time away from your families. So Jack, 2012, 20 projects, 4,500 units. How many GPs? You also at 8, and then this one's the 9th one?
Yeah, together we're at 8, and this will be 9th. But so, I was a corporate CFO, of a $1 billion company. It was a lot of moving parts and busy. And initially I was just looking for a new way to invest and, get out of the stock market and start, finding some other, assets. So, I started doing that. And, I'd also headed up global mergers and acquisition for a Fortune 500 company. So I'd fly around the world, looking for assets to buy that would, kind of fit in with the company that, I was the CFO of. And that meant valuing the assets. Well, first finding them and talking to, the owner, valuing them, getting loans, figuring out how to run them, integrate them, and all that. So in parallel, while I was doing that, I was investing in multifamily, and I realized, wow, I could avoid all these plane rides to whether it was Vietnam or France or South America, India. I mean, I've probably been to 45 countries, mostly on business. And so I was like, wow, I could actually do multifamily better than a lot of the sponsors that were around just because of my skill set. I'm getting loans, all that stuff, right? So, and then Alan and I started investing, as LPs together. Really got to know each other, and yeah, it's been a great run. I love the business. I mean, getting an asset or hunting for one, all the work with the brokers on the front end doing that. And then once you find one, really tearing in and figuring out, hey, can this thing make our investors money? Because if it can't, we're out. We usually know that within an hour of becoming aware of a deal, so yeah.
So as partners, you guys have to determine, okay, what's my role? Okay. Do you know that up front? Do you say, hey, I'm a good underwriter? Am I good with the brokers? How do you guys manage that? Because I'm assuming there's just two of you in your company. Do you have any quiet partners that, do behind the scenes?
Yeah, we have a lot of employees. They're all perfect 1099s.
There you go.
So
Perfect.
We do have a fractional CMO who handles a lot of our marketing stuff. We've got an outsourced accounting firm. So we do have a lot of brain power and, hands that help us. But, we've run huge teams, big W-2, type jobs with all kinds of departments. I had like hundreds of people. So was Alan, under him in his project. So we decided to try to do this employee light, I mean, and both of us play all the instruments. Before we started working together, we'd already done our own deals, significant size deals. So I can do the underwriting, Alan can do the underwriting, we can go schmooze the brokers, we can, get into legal documents. We both read every word in the legal documents. So, we can do all of that, and we just kind of figure out, based on our workloads and who needs a vacation, who's doing what at the time. So we surprisingly don't have a super formal, delineation of who's doing what, but we're just always there. I always feel this huge, sense of responsibility to, keep up with, working, because Alan works his tail off. That's the thing about this business. It's not just, go find a co-GP deal and, raise a little capital and sit back. I mean, if you really want to be successful in this space, you have to understand all the aspects of it and put in the time.
So that's a really good point. I do want to talk about partnerships. It's a big point of learning in this community, because a lot of people go to the education programs and they say, hey, we had coffee. We talked every day. We sat next to each other. Let's be partners, right? All right. You guys have been doing this for a very long time. What was your process to getting to work together? Tell us, break that down for us, because I'm sure it's a little different. You guys vetted each other. You're both in Dallas. You're both going to conferences. At what point did you say, Alan, I want to be yours. Jack, let's do this together. Let's get married. Because you really do get married in these deals. Well, no judgment, no judgment. That's all right.
So that's a good analogy. It's one that I use a lot of, I always tell people you have to date a while, before you get married. And it's the same thing in partnerships. And so, as Jack mentioned, we first met 10 years ago, and we'd seen each other and this, that, and the other, but you kind of get to see how the other operates, what questions they ask, and then over time we spent more time together on some things and talked about partnering. This is actually it's been a long conversation, and along the way, having worked with a lot of teams, I think where, people get really, when they first get involved, there's a lot of FOMO out there. And
fear of missing out, just in case somebody doesn't know what that is. There's a fear of missing out. Let's keep going.
yes. And so, but what you realize is that, there's plenty of deals out there. There's plenty of capital out there. There are plenty of partners. I don't care which market it is, it's out there. I don't subscribe to the, scarcity mentality of any of those things. And so, but when you first get started, those resources are scarce because you may not have the visibility to them. And so you're trying to get started and trying to do whatever you can. And that's not necessarily wrong, because at least you're taking action, which is, making a decision, taking action. That's, two most important things.
Mhm.
But that being said, you really have to be honest with your potential partners up front. And I feel very strongly about this. It's not just about, hey, I'm really good at doing X, Y, and Z, but there are also things that maybe I just absolutely despise doing.
Mm.
And, if I don't voice that, let's say, I was talking with Jack, it's like, so if I don't voice something that, oh yeah, maybe I'm great at, but I hate doing it, and he hates doing it. So, but somebody's still got to do it. So then that doesn't really create a good partnership. And a lot of times these things come out, after you get into the deal. So I think just, open and honest communication, up front of what you're good at, what you like to do, what you don't like to do. I'm not saying that's easy to do, but man, it's a lot easier to have that conversation up front than, being in a bad partnership, where you're stuck for a period of time. So
Yeah.
That's my hot sports opinion on that.
It takes some marriages forever to get to that point. So, if you can
Yeah.
do it in 10 years, hey, great. All right. So you guys decide to get into a partnership. Do you find that, hey, I'm going to make phone calls to you 24 hours? Do you set up, okay, you're used to working from 9 to 5. Does that work for both of you? Do you have that conversation? Because here's the deal. I work all the time.
Yeah.
If you guys didn't know that, I work all the time. You can find me all the time. My partner also works all the time. And I have a other partner that does not work ever. And so he doesn't want to show up for meetings. He doesn't want to do what it takes to do this to be a partner. It's those conversations. So how does that go? Can you kind of tell us how that conversation went?
Sure. I mean, we're kind of old school in that we like to be in the office. And we have a couple options for that. I mean, our 2 houses and our office space, and we kind of just changed the scenery a little bit, but we definitely are together usually at least 3 days a week for an extended period of time, starting, sometime after 9 and, going tonight we'll go till 8, or 9, just with the, breaks here and there, but we try to take the weekends off. Family time is important. That doesn't mean we won't connect, but I think we've gotten into a pretty good cadence of that. And, we talk every day, even if we're not, getting together. And I just want to hear what he's thinking, because, we both have perspectives, right? And they're both valuable, and we agree a lot on stuff right off the bat. So that's great. But when we don't, that's actually more important. I'm super interested in hearing when Alan has a different opinion of me, because I'm like, wow, there's something I didn't think of, or whoa, I give him the credit of, his opinion is very valuable to me. So together we're better is really, what the partnership means. And then, both have to work,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Mm.
So you guys used to be doing B and C assets. And you did a great job at them. You've released some, right? You've sold some.
Yes.
Most
And now,
of them.
right?
Yeah.
Your B and Cs. So now you guys are going to A-class assets.
Mhm.
Alan, you had one. This will be your second one. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And Jack, is this going to be your first A? How many A's have you done?
Yeah, I've done a number as a limited partner, so
As
it
a
was
limited partner, yeah.
very keeping up on what was going on with those. But when I saw Alan do that A class deal last year, that's when it really solidified that I wanted to be partnering with him. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do now. So,
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
so let's talk about that. What was your decision to go A? Because we can talk, oh, there's so much risk involved in B and C. Why wouldn't you always just start in on A's? Yes, they're more expensive, but kind of walk us through what your decision to change to an A was.
Yeah.
That's a
So
big deal.
yeah, and I'm a visual person, so do I have the ability
Yep.
to share?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me do this. And I believe you should see
Yes.
a PowerPoint.
Yep.
Yeah, let me try that. That might be too big.
You can
Oh,
open it
right.
all the
Yeah,
way. I think you can open it all the way open. I don't know.
Yeah, here. I've got a really wide screen, so usually when I go
Oh.
full screen, it causes an issue. But
Yeah, his screen is almost like a football field. Like
Oh.
Jerry's Cowboy Stadium screen is maybe smaller than Alan's monitor.
whatever. All right.
Perfect.
Okay. So just to show this is a really cool picture that Jack and I took a few months ago. So we're 6 stories up on some scaffolding on an A-class property, which was uptown at Cole Park. And so that's the 2 of us and the regional manager. And so we were having a good time kind of inspecting, what was going on. But, to take you through kind of where some of the places that we've been, so Hewlin Park Place is a deal that bought in 2018 and sold it in May of this year. And so, this is a 1985 townhome asset. I would call it, when we bought it, probably a B minus, and we sold it, probably a B. And so you can see, typical things of, the kitchen before and after, we had Formica countertops, went to granite, upgraded to, stainless appliances, added a backsplash. Down here, this is what the office looked like before, and then after. So just upgrading the aesthetics of it. And then we transformed the pool. So point being is, very typical thing. And, we increased the NOI by over 50%. And so, our LP returns on that were, a 2.7 multiple in about 4.5 years. Just giving another example, you want to talk about Oasis Springs?
Yeah, sure. So Oasis Springs was a 154 unit property in Hearst. Everything we do is, relatively close to where we live. This was 8 miles away. You can see on the far left there, we had a lot of foundation problems with this property. There was 19 buildings. We had to, do foundation work. And sometimes that means taking the bricks off the wall, which we did there. It doesn't help early in your business plan when there's a giant tarp in the main entrance, over the walls. People are driving in thinking, there's no way I want to live there. And then if you look at the bathtub, that would be maybe a double reason why you wouldn't want to live there. And then you can see the kitchen. That's what it used to look like. And then down below, you can see that, that wall. This is still before we resodded and all that, but that was the wall after it was fixed. And then you can see the bathroom. A lot better, more likely to want to take a bath there. And then, the kitchen. So, you can see outside there too. But, it's a B minus, but we increased the net operating income by 62%. And we sold it for a 2.4 equity multiple, and the whole period was just about 3 years. So it was a really great outcome for our investors.
So let me just make sure that everybody understands that equity multiple. If you're not familiar with this, if you take $100,000 and you invest it in the Oasis Springs on a 2.4 multiple, how much is their return on 100,000?
Yeah, so they would get their initial 100,000 back and another 140 on the 2.4. So it's just what your equity in is. That's the multiple. So 240,000 is what came back to them either along the way in distributions or at the end. And this was a value add deal, so almost all of it came back at the end. That's the challenge with these older properties is they kind of pick your pocket. You got, slab leaks and other problems that you're paying along the way. So people used to love looking at cash on cash return, and Alan and I we don't care about that. We want to know what you're going to get at the end,
Okay. Do you do preferred returns?
We historically have not. We'll probably
Okay.
add that because there are people who do have fixed income goals.
Yeah.
We do have a preferred group in this deal. They were just a large group that came in. We were talking to them. They wanted to be part of the deal, and they were like, "Hey, how about if we come in as preferred?" And we're like, "Great! That helps out our investors with their bonus depreciation and gives everybody a greater ownership percent of the actual sale on the back end." But yeah, so we do the preferred too as well.
So 36 months, everybody, 37 months they held this, and they made someone on 100,000 made 140,000. That's unbelievable. Great job. Let's see the next one.
Yeah, so I wanted to show, visually kind of,
Yeah.
where we've been in the B and C, and then, going to, back to the A. So this is the same asset that we saw in the first picture. And
without the scaffolding.
yeah, without the
Right.
scaffolding. So, 2016 built asset in uptown Dallas, right off of 75, just north of downtown. So it's a fantastic area. But that being said, in the end, if I had a group of people, we were standing across the property before we were buying it, just over here. And, I asked the question, I said, so who here thinks this is a value add property? And nobody raised their hand. And so I'm like, this is absolutely a value add property. And the reason why is with all of these deals, it's all about what does it take to increase the revenue to ultimately increase the net operating income. Now with the B and C value add properties before, there were physical issues with the property. And so we had to put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And so in the end, our residents would see that as value and be willing to pay more for it. Well, at Uptown Nicole Park, the current rents were below the submarket. And the reason why, there was a lot of deliveries in the area. There were a lot of concessions looking backwards, but not looking forwards, as well as we've really done a lot of things to transform this asset from just another A-class property, which, a few years ago, I would be like, that sounds like a crazy thing to say, but it's now an iconic asset, and people now know where this asset is. I can talk about the mural and everything, and they're like, oh yeah, we know. And so, and they're willing to pay more for that on top of just burning off the loss to lease. So, and then another thing that we did down here, so I don't have a good before picture, but I'll try to paint a picture in words. So imagine, if you will, that instead of this really cool hard surface 4-color herringbone pattern on the floor, you had this dirty carpet. And if you've ever been in a building that has valet trash, sometimes things get spilled and, maybe it stinks a little bit and things like that. And so, there's pros and cons to valet trash. But originally we were thinking about just changing the carpet, out because it was time to change it. But in working with our designer, we kind of came with this idea of going hard surface, but not only that, adding a design element to it. And then also the halls were painted this mint green, which was kind of like, an old hospital, and it was really dim lighting. And, here it's kind of hard to tell, but there's actually 3 different colors between the 3 walls. And then we changed the lighting, both in terms of the color, temperature, and the brightness. And why am I spending so much time on that? Well, when you see rent increase renewals of 20 to 30%, when your average rent is pretty high at this place, so this means that, say, the renewals are going to be $300 to $500 per month. Well, a quick funny story is, there was a resident while we were in process of doing these upgrades, and it was a floor that we hadn't gotten to yet, and went to renewal, and they're like, oh, well, we don't want to upgrade because we're not getting the same upgrades as the other floors. And, of
Hmm.
course, the leasing staff is like, well, of course you're going to get that. We just haven't gotten to it yet. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll renew. And they renew for 25%. So, for them, I think that worked out to be about $400 a month. And, we can all take that, times 12 and, a cap rate. And that's some huge numbers in value creation.
Yeah, what was like your estimate, like per door when you bought it versus where you think the value of the property is now? Just give everyone a sense.
Yeah, so we bought it for $258,000 a door. And when we were buying it, of course, it's the first. I was talking about buying an A-class property for 2 years, and finally do. A lot of my colleagues in the B and C space thought I was absolutely crazy.
Me too. I thought he was crazy.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be the first time I've heard that. But I had a vision, and I was looking at people that had way more experience with me, and they were doing the same thing. And so I just had to break into it. But there's another property also built by the same builder, same vintage, just a couple blocks down the street, and it sold last year for $445 a door. So we feel really good, about our basis in this property, and we view it as a legacy asset. And this is kind of the avatar of when we buy it, is when we go to look at a property, like Jack was saying, is like we have to look at a property, and it has to be a high quality property, a high quality location, and we could look at owning for a period of time being 10 or plus years. And instead of just flipping the property in 2 to 5 years like we did before, we want to refinance it multiple times over time and reduce our basis in the property to zero or below zero. So basically everybody gets their money back. We still own the asset. So we have a high quality cash flowing asset. We take those monies that, we got those loan dollars tax free and go buy some more high quality assets. So that's the reason why, we've pivoted.
Yeah. I used to have a belief, it was a false belief, that you couldn't find, Class A properties that would be, a value add where you could actually increase the value of the property, right? So we always look for a compelling story about and reason why we believe we can raise the rent roll. If we can't, we don't buy it. So there's always got to be some story there. And I don't know, just as an example on the deal we're closing on next week, the builder built it in 2019 and, filled it up with concessions and discounted rents like builders do. COVID hit. No one was raising rents during COVID. So all those, residents benefited from, no increases. And then the, builder did sell the property to a different group, but that group, it's an Oregon teachers fund, and they're against kind of, passing on rent increases on renewals. They have a policy of only 4% is acceptable. And, property management will just, gravitate to whatever their expectation is. So there's people that are living in, a floor plan paying $1,025 a month in the same floor plan. So they moved in 2019 and they stayed there. They keep renewing for small amounts, right? There's people who live in that same floor plan that moved in the last 3 months or so, and they're paying $1,485 a month. So, and that's a brand new Class A building. It's beautiful. And there's that $400 a month, per unit kind of differential with, half to 2/3 of the units. So we see like a $20 to $25 million value add on that, which we're going to burn that off in 24 months and refi at 30 and, call it a win for our investors, because we'll probably distribute money at that time. And, if not, we'll definitely have more, money to share in terms of, distributions on a go forward basis. So anyway, that's
and you have no CapEx, or you do have a CapEx on the one that's going to be closing next week?
Yeah, the new one, there's a little bit of CapEx. I mean, it's
I'm gonna show it real fast.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's see that one.
So we were spent a lot of time and effort creating the feel for Uptown Cole Park, and this property, which I believe you should see now, you can see, like, it's already an amazing, beautiful property with a lot of artistic design elements, really cool murals. It's right on Magnolia Street in the heart of Southside Medical District, just next to downtown Fort Worth. And actually, there's a big arts festival, actually 2 arts festivals they have every year. And in 2019, when they delivered this building, they actually did a local artist competition. And so it's kind of hard to see here, but you know, kind of down along all the landings on both sides of the building, there's 20 additional murals that were all created by local artists as part of that competition. And Jack, what did they get?
So the winner of the 20, the 20 artists, the winner with the best mural that was voted on by, you know, a bunch of judges, they got to live in the property for free for a year. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah.
And when were their leases? Oh, that was in 2019?
Yeah,
probably.
So they've moved on, maybe.
Oh, we would definitely crank up their rent.
Exactly.
But
or maybe they decided to live there. I don't know.
So to go back to your question of like, well, what can you do to a beautiful property? It's like the same thing with Uptown Cole Park. What can you do? Well, in the end, it's, you know, what are the residents value and what are they willing to pay for? Well, one of the things we also did at Uptown Cole that I didn't talk about was we implemented our own internet service as well as Spark Technology. Well, the Mag and May already has Spark Technology, but doesn't have its own internet service. So we're actually going to implement that using the same exact provider that we're using at Uptown Cole. And so that's one of those things where we're going to provide a higher quality service compared to AT&T fiber at a lower cost. So the residents will get a higher quality service at a lower cost, but because it's our own service, our revenue share on that will be much higher than it would be otherwise. And so, you know, that drops to our other income. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. Other things, you know, it's kind of hard to see from this angle, but there's this big open courtyard. It's in the front of the property that faces Magnolia. And, you know, interesting enough, as Jack mentioned, it was delivered in 2019. So there were actually 3 large retail areas that were built when the property was originally built with these big courtyards. And actually in 2020, it was converted into 9 residential units. And so they still have this big backyard, or big courtyard area. And so we have a rendering to create this really cool geometric steel fence to kind of make this area a little bit more private, as well as a really cool lighted sign. And so it's going to be, you know, not only a design element, but it's going to be an area. And it's also an area because they have separate access from the rest of the building, that we're actually looking of doing those as some long-term, short-term rentals to service the medical area of, say, nurses that have, you know, 13-month contracts and things like that. So that's a couple of things that we're planning to do. As you can see, the building's beautiful.
So a couple of questions I have. So it looks like the artwork seems like that's popping up more and more in Dallas. Do you find that is kind of sells the building? Do you feel like people pay a little bit more for that, or just that it's iconic? What kind of talk me through that? So
on this, I'm going to tee it up and let Jack answer. So it's definitely one of these things where if people know where it is and it's iconic, it's like, oh, you live in that building. That's cool. This is also a live, work and play area, but, you know, Jack, why don't you tell everybody about your meeting with the Fort Worth mayor and how that went?
Oh yeah, sure. So, you know, we're very big on the, you know, Fort Worth and Tarrant County, you know, area. And one of the things I wanted to do was get to know the mayor and the, you know, the housing department and the development, you know, group and all that. So when I was meeting her she had just come off the stage speaking, and I'd asked some questions about, you know, housing. So she came up to me, we were talking a little bit, and she said, so do you own any properties, you know, in Fort Worth? And I said, I'm about to buy one right on Magnolia. And I said, you would recognize it, or you would know it. She's like, oh, there's too many apartments. There's no way I would know it. And I said, well, it's the Mag and May. She goes, oh, with the mural. She's like, I do know it. Yeah. So you're just having that type of engagement with a city leader like that.
What was her first question?
Yeah. Her first question is, you're not going to paint over the mural, are you?
Oh,
We
isn't
want to
that
make sure we weren't going
interesting?
to take it, paint it just some beige color, right? So, so even the mayor has, pride in,
Huh.
buildings like that. So I think it's a way for us to sort of set ourselves apart a little bit in terms of, one, investors, but two, with residents as well. They think it's cool to live there. The average income at the Mag and May is $150,000 a year. Those are people that could live in houses if they wanted to. They want to live there.
Mm.
So that's actually a really important point, because, when we talk about, increasing the rents to increase the net operating income, in the end, the residents in the submarket have to be able to afford that. And that's another reason why we've moved from, the B and C side, is that, at some point, rents, can't grow to the sky. There's a limit on what, folks can pay, and for example, this building, we could actually increase the current rents more than 2.5 times what they are right now. And the current residents could afford them. As opposed to other places, it's like, all right, well, if they had like a $50 or $100 rent increase, well, they may no longer qualify for that. So it's a very, very different, ball game. We see this as, accretive to our, risk adjusted returns. Another reason why we like the asset class.
So I do have a question about that, and then we're going to wrap up here on going with this asset class. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, how the heck can you afford it? Do we have enough people that can bring in the net worth, the liquidity? We've got the experience, but how do I get this done? I mean, I'm sure, Alan, you were like, I want to do this, but how do you get it done? So really talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. We were just talking with each other. Because it was one thing to talk about it, like, oh yeah, I want to go do this, but it was, I went from, 12 years ago, didn't know about multifamily, to, okay, I get in my first multifamily deal, and, my first multifamily deal that I was a GP on was a 38 unit in South Irving, a beautiful piece of crap, 1963 property in South Irving that, was completely torn up, and our entire purchase price for that property was $900,000. It was $13,000 a door. So
Wow.
things, and we had a recourse loan on that deal. So fast forward to today, it's not something that happened over time. We had to grow into. And so, I don't have the net worth to, go buy that kind of asset like Uptown and Cole Park or Mag and May on my own. And so, that's the other thing of, partnering up with folks to, put together a deal. And so, for Jack and I, we could take down a deal of a certain size, but then with Mag and May, we have another guarantor on the loan that stepped up to help us, secure the loan. And, and then, sharing in, the liquidity of that. And it's something that, we've grown into, as we've been doing this 10 years, and our net worth and liquidity is, increased. And there's definitely a barrier to entry of Moon here, is because, I mean, when I bought the deal, the Uptown and Cole Park last year, it was such a big jump from, where I'd been before, even though I've been doing this, a while. But, we put together, the right team that had the right, check the boxes in terms of net worth, liquidity, experience. And the other thing is the brokerage community is different in these more institutional quality assets from where we were before. And so, even though I'd been in, the DFW market for a while, it was a separate set of brokers, and they're like, well, who are you and why should we listen to you? And, so we, leveraged references of people that hadn't transacted with them before, that could vouch for us. And we said, hey, give us an opportunity to, execute the way we say we can do. And, we did that. And because we did that last year, this deal was actually an off-market deal, brought to us, as the first folks, and it was the same brokerage that bought the other deal from. That wouldn't have happened, otherwise. And so it's, in the end, it's just something that it takes time to build over time, and, building the right team, and, doing that in the right way. And
I do want to interrupt you for a second, because that is a key point. There are people that jump in. I'm not going to name anybody. There might be some people in the room that say, I got a $20 million deal. I just started 2 weeks ago. I got a $20 million deal, and I'm going to take this down. Okay, I'm here to help you, but you really hit it on the mark. You started at 38. You started in a C class. You went to B. Now you're an A. This Maggie and May, right? How much are you paying for that?
65 million.
65 million. That's taken 10 years, friends, 10 years to get there. Be patient. This is the long game. Okay. These guys have put in time, effort, tears. This takes time.
Tears.
Yeah.
Right?
Tears,
Your tears, your wives, they're crying because they don't see you. No, but I really want everybody to understand, you can't go fast. You guys are so mellow. It's because you're taking your time. A lot of these people we're in a hurry. We're in a hurry in these education programs. We're going to be millionaires. No, it's crazy, guys. Take your time. Do it the right way. Build your team slowly. Get to know your partners. Get to know your investors. What do they want? What do they need for their returns? Don't shove it down their throats, right? I mean, it really is. Okay, I've got 2 questions. I know I only had 1, but I have 2. There was a little bit of a challenge, and you can tell me, zip it. There was a little bit of a challenge during this time, right? With debt.
Yeah, be happy to talk
So
about it.
let's talk about that real quickly.
Yeah,
We're some tears.
Yeah, we're super transparent. So, we believe ultimately we got the deal because of the challenges going on. If the institutions were all still playing, they all put their pencils down and went home. They were like, well, we'll take the summer off and we'll figure this out. We don't want to take any risk. And we don't like risk, but we were happy to get the deal awarded to us. We were able to negotiate, some down off the purchase price because of what's going on. But the challenge was on the debt side, getting a loan that we were comfortable with. We went out with our PPM with the loan that was at 400 plus SOFR, and we were going to have to buy an expensive rate cap and all that. And we could have made that work, but we just weren't satisfied. So we spent the entire summer talking to 90 lenders, and we had really deep conversations, probably 30.
That was with Old Capital, right?
What's that?
That was with Old Capital, right?
Well, actually, Paul was kind of helping us a bit, but
as a consultant,
more as a consultant on this one.
But actually, it's a good point.
Yeah,
I'll just interject right there.
Yeah.
So the seller had a high need to work with a particular brokerage house on this. They had a relationship with, so we did go with them. But we've done a lot of business, with Paul in the past, and he's been great, and he consulted with us on that, and also helped us with, the other institutional investors. So,
yeah, but ultimately we were looking for a balance sheet lender. That means they've got their own money. They're not borrowing the money here and then quickly lending it to us and making a spread. So we wanted a balance sheet lender. I used to be a CFO at a Fortune 500 company. So lending, borrowing money, working with banks. I knew there was money there. There's plenty of capital out there. It was just sitting on the sidelines. So, long story short, just to give people like the details on the loan, it's a SOFR plus 325. But the cool thing about it is that there's a ceiling. So the interest rate can't go above 7%. There's a cap of 3.75 on the SOFR. Not a cap, a ceiling. Cap is a confusing term, right? So, but when we modeled our, we build out a pro forma, we build a 5 to 10 year version, all that stuff. We have a loan amortization schedule, which just means month by month, how much principal, how much interest are you paying? What is your assumption on the rate? And we use the Pensford or the Chatham, curves. You can go right on, type in Pensford or type in Chatham, and JP Conklin's from Pensford, so they have a month by month, chart that you can use, and you can plug in interest rates by month, right? So our $42 million loan times these, first increasing and then at some point decreasing interest rates, we came up with a blended rate for the whole period. And then we're reserving on our balance sheet in our own bank account, self-insurance for the interest expense if it goes above what we've modeled it, all the way up to the 7%. So if SOFR got high and stayed high, we would be, at 7% max. We've got that, in the bank. So we were fortunate enough to find a lender like that. It took a ton of work. I mean, we sacrificed a lot of our summer, knowing that brokers and others were off kind of having fun because it was a slower time. But it's just about caring about the deal and making sure it's, it's really protected. But yeah, great question. It was very challenging. We have a Dropbox that we use that we'd share with lenders with probably 30, 40 files in it. We took all the, we got all the due diligence done, published all those reports in that Dropbox, and then would share it with these lenders, and then jump on a call with them, ask them if they, reviewed all the materials. And, so anyway, a lot of dead ends, but we did build some new relationships too. So.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. So Paul is our owner of Old Capital. He's been in business for 36 years. I'm happy to be part of Old Capital and his success, and he does great things. So I'm glad that you were able to get him to consult and help with your needs. All right, last question, because I could go on for a really long time. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate your insight to help our audience here. What are your words of wisdom? What are your words of wisdom for new investors, people who haven't been around the block for 20 years or for 10 years for that matter? What do you have to say?
Well, I tried to sprinkle some nuggets in there, but Jack kind of alluded this to, so and he kind of also said this on stage at the Old Capital conference.
And by the way, thank you, Jack, for doing that.
And I took good pictures. but with a lot of things, you have people that a lot of people want to talk about doing something, but when it comes down to it, I always have two questions when I'm building teams or looking at partners, and it's like, okay, first question is, can they do it or not? I.e., do they have the raw capacity and skill to do it? And then for those that do, and the second question is, will they do it or not? And that really gets to the heart of, there's a lot of people that'll talk about it, but when push comes to shove and you got things going sideways and you got to figure something out and do something, like, you got to do work. And as a GP, there's definitely some work. It kind of ebbs and flows, but when you're in the throes of it, you're gonna be able to dig in and get your hands dirty and figure things out.
Yeah, make a decision. Sounds like make a decision, do it, and make a decision, do it, and then get it done. Yeah. Okay, Jack, what about you? What is your words of wisdom?
Sure. So I would say definitely learning from others. These networks, this type of event, the Old Capital events, other events. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, and we don't have a scarcity mentality. There are some people we run into that do, but there's a lot of really bright people out there that work hard and solve problems in different ways. Like, I was just talking with Michael Becker today. He was calling me about something and asking me what I thought. And I'm like, great, wow, I feel like I've arrived if he's calling me to ask me a question.
Awesome.
Anyway, I would say network is really a key thing. Building that
network.
Local and just across the country, because we can all connect easily.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's the beauty of Zoom. You can do it at home at any time, any hour. So we've been greatly successful in this, and getting out of your house, being with other people is so important. You get to make those relationships. I know you guys get out of your offices and travel, and so. Well, thank you.
One other thing, as you guys were talking, because Jack and I feel very strongly, about this, is some of our core principles. Being straight, with people and not wasting people's time. So nobody wants their time wasted, but especially when it comes to the brokerage community, like, there's a lot of people that like, oh, I'm gonna offend somebody if I'm saying no or this or that and the other. Well, you know, a lot of times a quick no, especially with a broker, if you're out, they will really appreciate that and know that, you know, when you say yes, you mean yes, and when you say no, you mean no, and you know, not stringing them along.
Yeah, good point. Good point. You have to have those brokers, and they are hungry right now. So great information. You guys, thank you so much. I appreciate it. All your support of Old Capital, and obviously thank you for joining Zoom at 8. We'll have to get you the t-shirts because they are hot.
Yeah, we'll wear them.
That's great branding.
Yeah, thank you.